Didn't go any further than that. It says it's connecting. Okay. We're live. It went. All right. Well, welcome. Welcome to the Anyone Can Farm live chat. This is our Thursday night edition, and this is when we set some time aside to interview someone else in the farm community that is doing something that is somehow connected with the things we're doing. And this week, it's going to be our friend and neighbor, Brice Mosher from Falmouth, Michigan. And let's see if I have the chat on. Yes, I've got the chat on, and we're good to go. So if we could, we'll just press on with the interview. And if you guys have questions for Brice, because he does stuff that we don't do, that's kind of nice thing about the community is people are doing different things. And then we get a chance to come together like this and pick the brains of other experts. So without further ado, I think I'll just turn it over to Brice. I've got like a brief bio here, but it's pretty brief. It's Brice Mosher is a full-time farmer and homesteader at Infinity Micro Farm in Falmouth, Michigan. Brice and his wife Nikki started their farm with their 4 daughters in 2016. Primarily a vegetable farm that markets through an annual CSA. Brice and his wife also raise American Guinea Hogs and poultry. All right. Well, welcome, Brice. Glad to have you.
Appreciate it, Mark.
As I was just saying, you'd think we live about 200 miles apart. I haven't seen you face to face in over a year, and I'm over your way all the time. I go to Ebel's all the time. And
that's about the extent of my travels is Ebel's hitting the hardware. That's about it.
But usually when I'm over there, I'm going over there for a reason, and I just get what I need, and then I'm heading back home to finish up what I'm doing. So it's not like and I know how it is too, when you're working and then somebody shows up for a little visit, you might be in the middle of something that's not always like what you really want. But okay. What is of interest to, I think, other people that are getting into our lifestyle, our homestead lifestyle, small farming lifestyle is like, if you could back up and tell us, where were you before you got into homesteading, and what was it that pushed you over the edge? How did it start? And then take us through to where you are now, because I've been standing back just watching your operation grow in leaps and bounds, and I'm interested in hearing what's going on too.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mark. Well, Nikki and I always had small gardens when we were, in the past, depending on where we were living, it kind of dictated how large of a farm or how large of a garden we had. Sometimes it was just a small 20 by 40 plot. Other times we had, 50 by 75s. So we always enjoyed the gardening aspect of things. We had zero interest in running any type of livestock or chickens or any of that. That wasn't even a thought for most of our life. But, when we got to the place where we're at now, it wasn't really something that we'd thought about doing yet, was farming. It was more of just do our 9 to 5s and go about life that way. We were raising 4 kids, and you know how that can be with, a lot of kids in the house. You got to just go out and get that paycheck and get home. And then in 2015, I ended up getting these severe migraines quite frequently. And it was something I had never dealt with before in my lifetime. I mean, it was out of the blue. When it first happened, I thought I was having a stroke or something like that. And it got to the point where the job I was doing at that time was construction, and then I also ran some management on some apartment complexes. It got to the point where I felt like I was seriously in trouble that I may not make it. I mean, it got to be almost 24/7 headaches. I couldn't focus on anything, couldn't do anything. And we decided that we were gonna, I was gonna step out of the workforce for a little while and try and get healthy. And it took about a year and a half for the migraines to really get under control. Went through all kinds of different doctors and scans and everything under the sun. And they come up with some ideas of what it was caused from, but nothing really got pinpointed. Once it kind of went away, rather than going back and looking for another job similar to what I was doing before, I decided I wanted to try and do something from home. And I wasn't sure exactly what that was, but I put in, I would say probably anywhere from 10 to 12 months of reading different books on, either woodworking or, something I needed to do with my hands at home. And I found some interesting videos on YouTube and some books that I'd read that, I can garden. And I've always known I could garden. And it was something I was interested in. I always liked to do it. And I thought, you know what? There's not a lot of, in our area, there's a lot of home gardens, but there's not a lot of growers in our area as far as produce and that kind of thing. The first year that we did it, we started with, I'm thinking it was maybe a 100 by 150 area.
Yeah.
And we grew a lot of produce on that little area, but it was kind of like that was the seed. That was what was going to get us going to where we are now. We did fairly well that first year as far as growing wise. Customer wise, it was a struggle trying to find places for all the produce that we grew. Farm markets, in my opinion, are not the way to go in these rural communities because there's not really a lot of calling for, I shouldn't say it that way. There's people that come to the farm markets to buy the produce, but they're usually going to buy that from the same Joe that's been doing it for the last 20 years at that produce stand. Or when you're the new guy at the market, you might sell a few things here and there, but you're not going to make a living doing that. And I wanted to get to the point where we can make a living. That second year, we grew our growing area a little bit larger and then offered a CSA. It was something that we'd read about and seen some videos on, thought, well, that's kind of an interesting idea. I think we had, don't quote me on it, but I think we had 5 or 6 families is all that first year.
Okay.
And we learned, and I'll tell you what, that first year was probably the most learning that we did. Trying to figure out how to get things timed out to where one week you could have a full bag or box, and then the next week have another without harvesting everything that first week and then not having anything second. So there was a lot of learning that we had to do timing wise, and starting that small really saved us. And last year, just to kind of fast forward you a little bit, that was in 2017 when we started our first CSA. This year, in 2022, we had almost 100 families that we fed every week. Yeah. So, yeah,
I think it was 17 when I met you.
Yeah. Yep. That would have been our second year. Yep.
Yeah.
Now this year, I think it was 94 was the number. We could have done more, capable of it, but we should have done less because the labor was just way, way too much.
Okay.
Being that we did a super long season, I mean, we were still picking for our CSA and harvesting and washing and all that through October. So, we were still getting fresh vegetables all the way through that because the weather was so good. But what that happens with that is my wife works at the school system, so my it's just me. And there's just not enough time in a day for me to get everything done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one of the things that we got to look at going forward is where do we focus our efforts? Do we go to a shorter season, get more customers, go to a longer season with less customers? There's a lot of things that we got to weigh out. But for now, I think this number of, somewhere between 75 and 80 families is probably going to be the magic number for us.
Okay. Can you give us a brief explanation for our listeners? What do you mean by a CSA?
Well, CSA is a model that was actually formed in Japan, from what I read, where neighboring areas would pool the resources into a growing area or farm, and then in return they would get their shares back. With the more modern American model of CSA, it's basically where the paying customer that wants fresh produce all season long, they pay ahead of time, and then each week of our harvest, they get their share of whatever's in harvest that week. So like in the early part of the season, they're getting things like spring onions and radishes and lettuce and spinach and that kind of thing. Where later in the season, they're getting winter squash and carrots and potatoes and that kind of thing.
Okay. So these families that you service, they're probably savvy about seasonal eating and probably like canning and things like that. Is that
there's accurate? Some of that, but there's also a lot of confusion. We've had some customers, hopefully they're not listening to the show, but there was one guy in Houghton Lake in particular where in June he was wondering where the sweet corn was.
Yeah,
that's not how it works, pal.
Yeah.
And we try, one of the biggest things that I try and tell, our customers when they're asking questions prior to them even signing up or paying me $1, one of the things I try and tell them is ask a million questions, because when you're buying the CSA, you're buying into the farm. You're not buying just a sack of groceries every week. You're actually buying into the farm. And come out, you can help me weed, or you can, come out and just wander around and look at things. That's part of what the, materialistic part of the CSA actually is.
All right. So you just kind of explained like sweat equity when people invest in your farm and then they come out and actually help you. How does that happen often?
We've got, I believe we still have 4 that are on like what I would consider the payroll, where they come out and they work 2 to 4 hours a week, and in turn they get their vegetables free of charge. So they get their shit for nothing, just for coming out and putting in 2 to 4 hours a week. We've had one gal that was with us from day one when we first started our CSA, Penny Lund. This year, we helped her get her own farm started. We built a greenhouse with her, helped her break some ground, get everything all situated to where she's growing now. And hopefully in the near future, she'll be offering a CSA in her neck of the woods.
Is she from around here?
So she's in the Merritt, Houghton Lake area.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've heard her name, but I don't think I know her. Maybe we do chickens for her. Maybe, I don't know.
I believe you do. Yeah, I believe you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way,
she's a sweet gal.
The listening audience, that's how I met Brice, is through our chicken processing. He brought chickens to us, and then I guess we found out that we were both in the Air Force and started talking about the life, and kind of went from there. Yeah, the life. So can you give us an idea of, because we have people in the listening audience that this might be of interest to them to get into produce. I think Brian Jacobs, he might be interested in that. I see him listening in. Can you give us an idea of the numbers, what that looks like? A typical buy-in, how many months, things like that. Is that doable?
Well, this past year was a little bit different for us. We joined a program with the Michigan Fitness Foundation. They're a nonprofit out of Lansing. They secured some funding through some government agency. I believe it's the USDA that funded them, where they're subsidizing CSA shares for families that are on the SNAP card benefit thing with the food stamps.
Okay.
So a portion of our customers this year were actually through that program. And that was a whole different monster for us. It's like reinventing our CSA is basically what it did, because we had to, like, every week it was a transaction. It wasn't just handing their box. They had already prepaid for it. Now we're going to give them their box, swipe their card, bill and invoice the Michigan Fitness Foundation for the remaining balance of those shares. So this year was a little bit different on that aspect, but typically for our private CSA, we do a half share and a full share depending on how large the family is. We try and tell everybody if it's 2, 3 people and you eat just an occasional vegetable every so often, a half share is gonna be plenty. If you're a vegan, you're gonna want a full share, or if you got a family of 6, you're gonna want a full share. I'm guessing, I think last year a half share for 10 weeks was $175. And I think it boiled down to basically somewhere between $15 and $20 a week.
Okay.
The way we had our different structures.
Yeah.
Per customer.
Mm-hmm.
And the break even point on that, if I went to a farm market, I'm not going to sell every bunch of radishes I pull out of the ground. But with a CSA, I do. Yeah. Because they go in every box. So
and they're coming to you, right? They're coming to you?
Yep. Well, we do one delivery to Cadillac and one to Lake City every week. And that was basically because of the SNAP program that we joined. They did pay like a delivery fee, and we allowed our Cadillac customers to meet us at that same point. I don't know if Jason Towers at Primo Barbecue over there in Cadillac.
Oh yeah.
He let us use he lets us use his parking lot for one of our meeting places, and the Council on Aging in Lake City, they also let us use their parking lot as a delivery point. So yeah, we do deliver there, but we do actually have, I would say it's probably about half show up at the farm once a week to pick up their shares.
So when they show up at the farm, do they just go right to the cooler and take their box, or do you have to interact with them?
Well, I actually do interact with them. That's why I set my Thursday evenings away, aside during the summer. Yeah. I don't have any major plans for them Thursday evenings because I know that's the day that they're going to be showing up. Or on Mondays, I know I've got to pack the trailer because Nikki will be hauling it to Cadillac to do the Cadillac delivery. Where this year we're building a new walk-in cooler. It's outdoors. We're just going to pack the boxes, stick them in that outdoor cooler, and they can just pick them up at their leisure.
Okay. So you'll be allowing them to pick up throughout the week or many days during the week?
Yeah, and that's just basically to avoid the fact that, we had pickup hours from 3 to 6. Well, some people didn't get out of work till 6, so they're showing up at 7:30. Or, hey, I was in Falmouth at 1 o'clock at Eagles because I got a sale on chicken wings. Yeah. Can I pick up my share? And how that stuff goes, Mark.
Do I?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's not really a convenience for them. It's just a time saver for me is what it's going to boil down to.
Yeah. Yeah. We noticed that what we did, I don't think you've seen it because this has been pretty recently. I just built a little overhang off of the shop, and then we put a refrigerator there. And we put stuff in there, and our milk customers just pull in the driveway, 2 steps out of their vehicle, they're getting their milk, and then they can get stuff out of the freezer if they want, and they're gone. And we find that
customer,
what's that?
I was gonna say for the customer that feels like it's convenience for them.
Well, yeah, because they don't feel like they have to come to the house and talk to anybody. They can just get their stuff and go. Yep. They don't even have to see a cashier.
I was gonna say the funny thing is they think that you're doing that for them, Mark.
Some of them, yeah. Some of them I can get in long conversations with, and I don't get much done if I do that.
I hear you.
Actually, I'm going to the next step. Actually, we're revamping one of the buildings to make it to sort of a little store, so that everything will be inside now. Gonna make it nice with tongue and groove and make it look really nice. And there'll also be a couple tables in there, so when we do our classes, we can have it be like a little cafe, and then we'll have. I could see a day coming. I really can, because we have so many people coming through the farm now, where I would be coming to you and saying, all right, how do I get 5 shares? Because then I could bring them the stuff here and resell it. And it would be a good thing for the customers because, one-stop shopping type thing. So I could see that day coming.
That's another thing. That's a great point, Mark, because we have a lot of private shares. prior to them buying that are asking, do you guys have milk? Do you have eggs? Do you have chicken? Do you have beef? They're looking for all that stuff. And, I'm not at I don't have the labor or the facility or any of that to where I can offer them. Now, what I can do is I can grow you some of the best vegetables on earth. But beyond that, I'm not looking to, when we got into this, that second, third year, the light bulbs start going off and if I do chickens, if I do goats, if I do this, if I do that, you're opening up a can of worms and you're going to fail at one of those things or all of those things. I mean, it's just one of those things where focus, be good at that, and then maybe dabble in something else later. And that's where I think right now my focus is going to be just growing vegetables. And then in the spring, I may do transplants for sales. I've got a new greenhouse that I put up there that's basically just going to be for transplants. And I may eventually just do a little bit more of the, sell some seedlings out of there in the spring, make a little extra cash that way. But as far as like adding other projects, me personally, I haven't done any poultry in 2 years. Little Miss Sophie, she started her own little poultry business. I think she sold 150 birds this year. So, and that was all her. So more power to her. I'll build her little chicken tractors and help her drag them around the yard if I have to. But I need to put my focus into the vegetables because that's what people are paying me to.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Totally agree, because I have a tendency to spread myself kind of thin because I'm doing something that's working, and then I say, "Ooh, I want to do that too," and so I spread myself over there, and it can get out of hand in a hurry. I don't know if you've been listening in, but
the worst part is.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
well, I was going to say we started taking milk into Cadillac for Mary Galvanic. Does that name ring a bell?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, she wanted milk and she wanted to come here and get it, but she's really busy, so it was hard for her to come here. And I started thinking, why we're going into Cadillac for Taekwondo every week anyway, and they meet at this place right in between the two lakes. It's on that right across from the high school, that old Quonset hut that was there. I think it used to be a Coast Guard or something like that. So that's where they meet. Yeah. So Jill brought a gallon to Mary the first week. The next week, she brought 7 gallons in. The next week, she brought 10. And now we're up to 12. And I'm going to be ringing Higgins's phone any day this week saying, I need more cows, because Cadillac, I mean, it's exploding. You have all these people that want things. They want food, and they're kind of figuring out the nutrient density thing, I think.
Well, there's some of that. I think that drives it. But there's also, I don't know if you've walked into a grocery store or not. I don't, but Nikki goes in and gets some of the, staples that we need. Yeah. She told me eggs are like $6 or $7 a dozen in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I need more chickens then too.
So it's not just the fact that people are starting to figure out, hey, I need to eat healthier. It's also the fact that there might not be stuff on the store shelf soon, but this guy's got it. Mark Baker's got milk. He's got chicken. And I think there's a little bit of that going on too.
Yeah.
I mean, I had people this summer telling me they will pay me for their vegetables for the following year if it means making sure that I do it again, because they just want to have that security. It's to that point.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I think people need to hear that loud and clear. And all right, along those lines, from your point of view, do you see what direction do you see this going? Is this going to change? Are we just going to be going back to Myers, or do you see a wide gap in what's going on?
I don't think it's going to be a total collapse. And that's the hopeful part of me. I've seen enough writing on the wall now to know that these interest rates aren't falling down. I mean, things are just going to keep going up. the stores are losing their asses on all these different products that people are, either ripping them off on. They can't get, and they're overpricing, and people aren't buying them. They're talking about closing stores like the Walmart. I mean, they're talking about closing these bigger chains down, not because they're not profitable, but because they just don't have the merchandise or the help to make them work. And I think as you see that stuff start coming down, people aren't shopping at Walmart anymore because eggs are $7 there and they're $7 at their local corner store. Why would you go to these big box stores? So I think you're going to see the bigger chains slowly dissolve, and I think your more mom and pop local community stores are probably going to survive and maybe even pick up a little bit of extra. But what I think you're going to see too is the food chain it's weak right now. We know that trucking's terrible. The price of trucking, the more local that you can get, and there's a push from even some of these government agencies that typically aren't on our side. There's a push from them people too to do this more local, food security thing. And the problem with the government being part of that is the regulations that come along with it. Now they're all promoting local, but they're also promoting their regulations at the same time. Whereas I see, the local grower actually benefiting from this is the customers that get fed up with the other stuff. Going to the grocery store and seeing it's more priced or higher priced than what it is to go to your local grower or producer. Plus, it's not, Sophie had a guy buy a turkey. He's never had a homegrown turkey before. And if you haven't had one out there, get one, because you'll never buy one in the store ever again.
Yeah, I know.
And that if I quit farming tomorrow, I'm still gonna have turkeys in my backyard, throughout the summer, because I enjoy them. And people are more open to testing those type of things now, where there was kind of a stigma embedded in the country for a long time. Well, if it's growing in someone's backyard, it's got to be poison. And I think that's kind of dissolving because of people like yourself on social media. Social media worked against us for a while because all the negative stuff that was out there. But now I think it's working in the opposite direction and actually helping dissolve some of them boundaries.
That's an interesting point of view. I guess I haven't seen that. But I can see how that could be. Yeah, that's an interesting point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll see smaller growers like myself. I mean, we're peanuts compared to some of these guys that are producing on 800 acres. There'll never be enough of us small growers to replace those large ones, but I think there'll be enough of us to keep our little community going. And then the next little community's got to have enough going for their little community. What I think it might boil down to is, what are we shipping out of this country and what are we bringing into this country? That's where we can kind of shift the balance.
Yeah. I've said to the viewing audience a lot of times that the way things have gone over the last couple of years, it's worked in my favor as a small farm. It's given me more opportunity. And I suppose that if I had everything in place, I could have really put the pedal to the metal and really done outstanding with it. But there's plenty of time. This is the way I see it. Every step in the right direction that I make, it's just more potential that's out there to make a better living and kind of build a bigger footprint. Now, all of a sudden, I'm starting to think we need to be linked up probably a little closer than we are, because there's opportunity there. If you've got people that are, but you're pretty well maxed out on veggies, right? Everything that you're making is going out, but
yeah, I mean, and that's by design. I spend the winters, I'll come up with a number in my head of how many people I want to serve next year. And then I develop my growing plan according to that. So, by mid-January, I can tell you which row is going to have radishes in it and which week. And I do that for the whole growing area, both, all three greenhouses, both fields. I've got them all planned out week by week, which row is going to be what. Got my rotation and set. And I do that just so I don't have a lot of overs. Granted, we got the pigs, so I've always got a home for that stuff. They'll turn it into bacon if nothing else. But I like being able to harvest a row out and know that, all right, I picked 400 pounds of broccoli today. 390 of it is going out in CSAs tomorrow. So I try and plan my growing to fit what my needs are.
Yeah.
And that's the other insurance for me as a CSA is I'm growing with basically no risk if a crop fails. I planted fennel this year. That was one of the crops that, man, the bugs got into that. Flea beetle just destroyed that stuff for whatever reason this year. I don't know if it was the variety I used or what, but I've also, it's one of those things I've always been able to grow before. This year, it was terrible. So I planted it. I used the CSA patrons' money to plant it, to pay for my labor to put it in the ground. It failed. That failure doesn't cost me in the long run, other than maybe a little bit of, this guy can't grow fennel. Yeah, well, they're still paying me for doing it. Even if I would have come out, the only thing I'm saving basically is my harvest time. But yeah, the CSA model helps in that aspect as far as like backing the farmer up, because if we don't get it here, but out west, if they get hail coming down and it wipes out your entire 2-3 acres, and you're just relying on farm markets, there goes your year. Where with the CSA, they kind of, customers already paid with the idea that they know they're taking the risk with you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I think we have a pretty good idea what a CSA, it's community supported agriculture. Isn't that what they call it? CSA?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So where do you see yourself in 2 years and then 5 years? Can you map that out for us?
When we started this in 2016, I did write a 5-year business plan ahead of time, telling myself how many shares I wanted to do, how many goats I wanted to be milking, how many chickens I wanted to be laying eggs. I may have well just not even wasted my time doing that because it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
The one thing that happened was the CSA took off. It was slow going that first 2 years, and then poof, it just took right off. And now I've got to turn people away at times. In 2 years, I think as far as like growing wise, I've kind of plateaued.
Okay.
But I'm gonna get better at it. There's gonna be less failures, more successes. I can probably, once I, because this place was overgrown Christmas tree patch when I started here.
Yeah.
Cleared all the trees up. So this soil is still on the build. I get my test every spring, and things are looking better, but there's still a long ways to go. So in 2 years, my soil's better, I'm better. But as far as like customer wise, I don't think I'm gonna have a bigger reach. I do think the one thing I can add to my business here would be perhaps specialized products. Like one thing we're going to try this year is growing tomatoes, little extra peppers, probably green beans because everybody likes to buy those, and do some things in bulk because we get calls like all summer long. Hey, do you guys have canning tomatoes? Hey, do you get a bushel of beans? Yeah. We get that constantly. So we're going to probably bring in a little bit more business that way with putting in larger blocks just for that. And I'll build that right into our growing plan. And then, like I said, with the new greenhouse, I plan on, it's a 30 by 48. I can chock that thing full of transplants, and, growing plants for me it's not the biggest cost by any means. So even if it kind of fails, kind of succeeds, it's still a positive in my mind to actually grow those transplants and sell them. Yeah. And that may be one of those things where I do 2 weekends in a row, go to a farm market for a couple weekends, take a trailer load of transplants with me and see how they do. Yeah. But as far as like my growing and with the farm, it's just basically fine tuning what I'm doing.
Is your model such that if you had if all of a sudden you had hands, could you put them to work instantly?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, we've always got. I mean, we've got a little dry erase board out there in the garage that we keep throughout the summer with a list of chores.
Yeah.
And then those, the helpers that we do have that don't have the funds available cash wise to buy their vegetables, but they have the labor available.
Yeah.
We just leave that list on the board and they show up and they just pick one of them off there and they go out and do it. So it kind of minimizes my involvement as far as trying to help manage things. It's just, in the morning, write down what needs to be done that day.
So start to conjure up these ideas of a labor pool that you could share people between farms, and it would almost be an intern program. Like let's say they lived here, but then we farmed them out to your place and our place, and then maybe Greaves's place or whoever else is around that could use some labor and could teach them something. That might be a nice program to have.
Yeah, I would think the basics, like running a stir pole, is probably nothing that no one's going to want to come learn, although there is an art form to it. But timing wise, like I would say in the spring, seedlings, there's some skill to that. Most home gardeners struggle with growing their own plants, and there's just a couple basic principles that they usually get wrong. It's either light or water. And then like the crop rotation stuff, knowing what can follow what, timing. If you're wanting to do this as a business, there's a lot that someone like myself or Bob over at Third Day or there's people in the area that we struggled, and I'm sure Bob will tell you the same thing, that he struggled at times. We can save you that year of struggling in that area with just a 15-minute conversation.
Right.
So, there's a lot of learning that can be done in 15 minutes that can save you a whole year. So I think, that what you're talking about with sharing labor, I think specialized things like when I'm doing greenhouse tomatoes, trellising those things up the string, there's a certain way you got to do it. Or I shouldn't say it that way because there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but you have to have the same basic principles in doing it.
There's definitely some no-nos too, right? There's some things you don't want to do, right? Yeah,
exactly. So those type of instructions, I guess, would probably be something that I would personally see value in if I didn't know, going somewhere else and working for a day to learn it. I could see where that would benefit in a lot of different facets, not just for what I'm doing, but for, operations like yourself or any of these other guys that are doing, other projects.
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting up a couple more greenhouses this coming year. So, many hands make light work on those things. This last one I did all by myself, and that was a chore.
I'll bet.
Pulling the plastic on that thing by myself was, I felt like I needed my Superman cape afterwards because I couldn't reach back and pat myself on the back enough after that one.
I wouldn't even think you could do that by yourself. It just seems.
I didn't either, Mark, but I did it. It was one of those things where, I had the frame up and for 2 weeks, windy it was a spring. For 2 weeks, I sat there with plastic on a roll waiting for a day. And I had labor lined up. One morning I woke up 5 a.m. and I looked at my wind gauge and it said 0. And I just went out there and did it.
You get toughened up, don't you? You just
I think happen. I was going to say that whole invention comes out, invention out of necessity or whatever how that saying goes. There's a lot of that with farming. There's things I would not have tried other than it needed to be done. And there was no other way to do it. What are you going to do? Grab your coffee and sit back and wait for someone to show up and do it for you? You just got to try it.
Not going to happen. Right. Well, that sounds pretty informative. Um, Now you've got other things going there, though. You've got the apiary, is that right?
Well,
And the mead thing. What's that about?
yeah. Well, the apiary, I still help my brother out occasionally on that, but he is actually kind of forced that off on him once we started to get to that 75, 80 share mark a couple years ago. I told him I just can't have. I don't have the time to spend away. We moved a lot of our bees down to Cedar Springs. And just dedicating a day to travel down there every 2 weeks was something I couldn't do. So he's taken over. He's got a friend that lives in the area that travels with him and helps him. He's doing killer on it. I think we've gone from when we first started the apiary, 2018, we had 5 hives. And I think right now he's currently at 38.
Okay. So that's
Now,
not on your property anymore. It isn't on your property
No,
anymore.
I'm gonna have a couple hives here again this year, in the summer, just for pollination on, putrid and that kind of thing. But as far as like honey harvest and doing all the treatments on the bees and that kind of thing, it's just something I don't have time for.
Yeah, it's a completely different thing, isn't it?
It is. It's there's a lot of things, and I feel like I feel confident that I could do that if that was my focus. I spent a lot of time learning on it, but it's just one of those things I don't have the time for it. I used to, 5 years ago, if someone posted on Facebook, "Hey, there's a swarm in a tree," well, I'd grab my gear and I'd go get that swarm. Anymore, I'm like, somebody else can have it.
Yeah. I hear you. I have way more to do than I can do.
Yep.
And I'm not complaining though. I like staying busy.
No, it's good to be busy, but like I said, focusing where that time is spent is, I feel like in the last 2 years I've really moved forward as far as I spent a lot of time reading and learning on different pests and fungals and bacterias and all that stuff as far as what can happen bad out in the growing fields or in the greenhouses, and being able to identify those problems early has really, just spending that time instead of going out and treating bees in the evening, I can grab that book, pop that open, rifle through it, and pick up some knowledge that's going to save me so much time the following 10 years. Just being able to focus my efforts in one direction really seems to be helping me.
Yeah. What about consulting? Is that something that you do at all?
Not on a professional level. It's more of like Penny starting out this year, helping her out. There's another gal up by Mesick that's getting going. She wants to grow a fruit farm, basically nothing but raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, that kind of thing. I can help her with getting her soil right as far as what I know about it. But I don't grow a lot of fruit. I mean, I've read enough to where I could fake my way through telling you how to do it. But as far as how to set it up, I can tell you, how to make it to where things are laid out for irrigation and that kind of thing. But professional consulting is not something that I would feel confident in doing yet. But if you want somebody to, bounce an idea off of, if you've got a pest in your greenhouse, shoot me a picture. I'll tell you what it is. Something's happening to my tomato plant, shoot me a picture. I'll tell you what it is. But as far as design, design setup, that kind of thing, it's really not my strong point. It really isn't.
I hear you, right? But you're still 100 steps ahead of the next guy behind you. So I just feel like that's what happened to me. Was I would say, well, I don't know that much about this, but I guess I know more than the people that I'm showing what I do know at this point.
Yeah, I get that.
And
yeah, I do.
It is quite helpful.
I do get that.
It's
it
helpful.
Is. And honestly, I wish I could talk to myself 5 years ago today. If I could tell myself, even if I had 1 hour to spend, I would be so much further ahead at this point if I had 1 hour to tell myself some things 5 years ago. And that's where I think people starting out or getting the idea of wanting to do it, you can't learn enough before you start. So even if you don't have your property yet, or you're not ready to quit your day job yet, don't quit learning, because it's going to save you time.
Right. Yeah. I did a consulting thing with a guy today, and I think at one point he said, well, yeah, but we're not going to be doing much until spring. And I said, oh no, that's not true. You've got the whole winter where you can hit in the books and you can get the things that you're going to have to do in the spring. Spring's not the time to get trained up on these things.
No, it isn't.
Any point that a fella gets into this or a person gets into it is there's opportunity for progressing. And, I think that if the wheels really fell off of society, sort of like what happened down to Rico. Are you aware of what happened down there?
I've read a little bit on it, but I haven't done a deep dive yet.
Yeah, but there was I think it had to do with us. I think we cut them off, or we did some sort of embargo, and it forced the people of Puerto Rico to start growing food, and they ripped out all their flower gardens and started growing produce. And the learning curve was steep, but they've never forgot that. And they haven't, from what I understand, they haven't gone back to growing flowers. They're big on growing food any place they can. And it'd be a tough thing if in the United States we had to find that out the hard way.
Yeah, there's another, for instance, similar to that is Cuba. When fuel prices, they weren't able to get fuel.
Yeah, it was Cuba, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Cuba? Yeah.
They had fuel prices that were astronomical, so they couldn't farm mechanically. They had to be done by hand. They didn't have fuel to run their trucks or their tractors. So they built these huge freaking farms out of concrete barriers, like basically a raised bed. Acres of them. I mean, hundreds of acres of them, of these concrete raised beds. And they started farming those things. And they're still using them today. This was back in the late 60s, early 70s, when they started that stuff. I think it really came to the forefront mid 80s under Reagan. But the fuel crisis was huge down there, and that was what kind of spurred that drive. They just couldn't farm mechanically anymore.
So what kind of mechanical means do you use? Like, what's your infrastructure like for the listening audience?
Yeah, my groundwork is all done with the 1947 Farmall Cub, all 9-10 horses of it. I do a little bit of plowing. I have converted some property over to no-till. Another chunk that I'm doing just disc kill on it rather than plowing anymore. But firsthand, that I pulled God knows how many hundreds of pine trees out of here, popples. I've got to plow. Someone here's plowing, they're like, "Oh, you can't do that." Well, I have to, or I'm going to have trees growing here again. Because popples will grow off of rhizomes, cherries will grow off rhizomes. So it's one of those things where I've got to do those preparation steps now, because I didn't buy a farm. I bought a overgrown Christmas tree patch. And I ratched a farm out of it. Now I won't be cutting any trees down this year for the first time in 5 years. I won't be pulling any stumps this year. So, I'm in a really good mood going into spring, because I don't have a lot of winter labor with chainsaw going right now.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things too with the, groundwork. The Cub is basically the only thing I use. I do have a little, what is that thing? It's a little front tine tiller that I do my walkways with once in a while. But other than that, it's basically a 2-wheel hoe, bunch of little oscillating hose, stirrup hose. Everything's done pretty much by hand.
Yeah.
I do think I will mechanize a little bit more with a 2-wheel tractor. There's an outfit in Ohio now called Tillmore. I don't know if you're familiar with them. To make a thing called the Power Ox. It's kind of like a reinvention of the old Planet Juniors and David Bradley's.
David Bradley.
And I've had my hands on one. Yeah, I've had my hands on one. They are killer. And for light cultivation, they work. And it's one of those things where it would probably shave 8 hours a week off for me. I do a lot of sterilization with flamethrower. I'll make the beds, prep them, fertilize them with some. I use a lot of that pasteurized chicken litter, and then I also use what is that other stuff? It's another dairy dew product. Healthy Garden. I use that as a top dress before I transplant. Sometimes I'll work it in. Other times I just leave it on top. I'll let that stuff sit. After I get a bed made, I'll let it sit for a week. Let the little weeds germinate. Go through the flamethrower, kill it off, and then I do my planting.
Okay.
Other infrastructure I have, I got 3 tunnels and a small greenhouse. Like I said, we're in the process. I've got the shovel that built for a new cooler. Pretty much all of our washing still takes place outdoors. I've got, 3 basin sink, couple drying racks, get everything sprayed off. We don't sell washed vegetables, we sell rinsed vegetables. So, I mean, it's,
yeah.
When you get your box or your bag that week, we tell our customers every week, wash your own vegetables. We'll knock the dirt off them, but we're not washing them for you.
Yeah.
And most of them they kind of like that. When they pull a carrot out of the box and there's still a little dirt on it. It used to be where people would be offended by that. Now they kind of think, oh, this is, that's got to be fresh. It's got dirt on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real.
Exactly. So, really for me, my infrastructure and my inputs are fairly low. Like I said, we do about 100 people or 100 families every year. My seed bill, maybe $600-700. So I mean, that's not astronomical. Fertilizers, I use liquid fish and kelp emulsion through my drip lines. I use that chicken litter and then that Healthy Garden stuff. I do use a little bit of the dairy dew compost, but I also get compost from whoever's got some good stuff around that I know has been treated well. I'm not opposed to using stuff off another farm if I know it's good stuff. Really, my inputs are pretty low. Biggest input is labor. It always will be, no matter what I do.
Did you ever think that you might have an employee at some point?
Well, that was kind of the drawing point while I set up, where we plateaued. The next step, if I were wanting to go up, would be employees, and that's not something I want to do. At one point I was running a local sawmill here in the area, and I had 110 guys working for me. Never again. That's just something I'm not interested in having anybody work for me ever again.
Yeah. Well, this is real interesting. I hope you know that in this network of people that we have here, we've actually got people that could be very beneficial to your operation that I think are seeing this for the first time. And I don't know about you, but lately the dots connect, and all of a sudden you realize, well, I've got this guy here that does this, and that would really be helpful to the overall plan. We've got some pretty good maintenance people. We've got some real good carpenters. We've got Homestead Provisions and their lumber operation that is top notch. So if you need something, just ask and it will be provided. I
Awesome.
even thought I've got a Alice Chalmers, a 47 skinny front end that I don't use anymore. I replaced it with a wide front end, 50 horse John Deere, 1965 John Deere. I replaced it with that. And this one is just sitting and it needs to be used. I wonder if that would work for your operation.
Well, I plan on getting another small tractor, kind of like the Cub or, one of those type of Alice Chalmers, something older that I can wrench on. I love those old iron tractors that you can carry a regular screwdriver and a crescent wrench and you work on pretty much anything on it. I like that. I don't have to plug it into a computer. I can just look at it, see what part's bad, and work on it. Because I do have, a 3-acre plot that I do farm, not here. It's on a friend's property 6 miles away. And it's a long drive with Cub. And I've thought about buying another tractor at some point. Just leave it there. Because, really all I need to run is a cultivator. It's my pumpkin and squash patch. Run a cultivator and then break the ground in the spring. That's really all I need to do. But like I said, it's a full day trip for me to take the Cub over there. I'll leave in the morning with a thermos of coffee and a can of gas. Go over there, do my work, and then splash a little more gas in and head home.
Okay. Well, we have come to the end of our hour, and this was very informative. It's informative for me, man. I got to come over there and see you. I really do. I'll show you this tractor too.
I was gonna say, this is the time of year, Mark, where I've got a little bit of leeway.
So do I.
It's just right now for me. I play around the wood shop now, turning some bowls again, doing a little bit of hobby projects with some woodworking. But it's low stress. I don't have a deadline on anything or any of that kind of thing. So, this time of year, basically from November through mid-January, I'm kind of like in coast and recovery mode. I do sit down. I will be sitting down and getting really serious around the first of the year, getting my growing plan set for next year. Finalize what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And then, having a plan laid out, it's huge, at least for me. I know some guys can just kind of wing their way through it, but for me, having a plan, I'm not saying I always stick to that plan, but having that plan there to refer back to it's huge for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I'm not the one that really does it all the time. Sometimes it's Joel that does it, but we do have a plan. I think going forward, we're going to have to look outside of the box too. Like if you produce something, like we produce a lot of chicken, and then we took it to the next level of ground chicken or chicken sausage, then we can even get more money for it, so we can do better with it. And we've done the same thing with the pigs. When we first started raising them, we were bringing them over to Ebel's to have them done. And now we're doing them ourselves. And we're even making our own bacons and our own sausages and all that stuff. But I wonder if you could do that. Actually, I know you can. And there's a guy on here, Brian Jacobs is on here, and he did that for a long time. Did you ever meet him?
Yeah.
Brian?
Yeah. I've met Brian. I've talked to him a little bit. I think he was making like different types of sauces with tomatoes and stuff out of his greenhouse, wasn't he? Yeah, that value added thing for me, I guess it would be one of those things where I'd have to look at it and say, I'm done with growing for 100 people. I want to just grow for myself and then do this with my product. Right now, my focus has got to be on, I've got this number of people in front of me to grow for, and that's what I'm going to focus on. Those value-added products, it works for a lot of farms out there. I know farms that are putting in commercial kitchens so they can make sauces or do pickles. There's an old Air Force guy that I know down in what's the name of the town? He's in Utah, but I forget the name of the town. Pickle farm, like 3 years ago. Now he's like one of the hugest freaking pickle farmers in the state. But he don't sell pickles, or he don't sell the cucumbers. He makes them into pickles. He's got every family member in his whole family employed making pickles. Real cool. Garza, I think, is their last name. He's next Air Force fella. It's just if you're going to pick a direction, go in it. And for me, my direction is the CSA model for right now.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with everybody. It's of great interest to new people that are coming into homesteading to see what somebody else's journey's been like, what road they started out on, where they wound up, and then hearing that you have plans for the future. I think that's pretty cool too. I do too. It really gets me going.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I don't want to say I fell into this. It was more of I fell into the idea And then, you're kind of like me, and I think a lot of military guys are. And I'm not saying it's just, the military that does it to you, but there's certain people that are just driven and focused like that as well. But when you pick a direction, you just go in that direction. When I decided to do this, I'm not doing it half-assed. I'm going to try and put every effort I can into doing it the best I can. And if that means me spending more time going to these online classes like I was telling you and Jill about, or picking up extra books in the winter to read, or going to visit other farms to learn how they're doing things differently than I am, and they're having more success. That's what I'm going to do. And I think that I would encourage everybody out there, pick a direction. If you want to just be a homestead and still keep your 9 to 5, that's your direction. Be good at all those little facets within your spectrum, but don't get too wide to where you can't be good at any of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, we're over. I appreciate it.
No problem, Mark. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, we'll have to get together for coffee soon.
I would like that. I like that. All right, I'm going to cut you loose.
All right, well, I appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, we'll see you, Brice.
Yep, see you.
Good night. All right, cool. That was nice. Nice that you could come by. I don't know if some of you guys caught this, but Brice lives about 5 miles from me, right over in Falmouth, which is the next town over from me. I go over there all the time to go to the hardware store. And almost every time there's an intersection I pull up, I think, man, I ought to stop in and see him. But then for one reason or another, no, I got to get this done. Or, no, I don't want to interrupt him. He's doing stuff. So I don't do it. It's a shame, because when I start talking to him and I see his face, it's like there's a great amount of encouragement and resource there. He knows a lot of stuff about growing. I should have asked him why he does not want to do livestock so much, but I think he did answer that. He said, no, I just want to stay focused on this. And a lot of that story I did know, because he had told it to me before when he was doing poorly with headaches. And that was the time when he really dug into the books and decided that he had to do something else, and he did it. That is something that really needs to be embraced. We had a guy on last night, Tim Milano. He's a member of the tribe. He's actually in the Tribe Plus, and so he comes to the consulting meeting on Wednesday. And his story is similar. He just decided, he picked the direction. He says, I'm going to do this. And last night he reports to us, well, he built a butcher shop. He said, I've butchered 4 cows, 6 pigs, and 2 goats, something like that. I don't know if that's the exact numbers. Doesn't really matter. But like what Brice did is something that we need to hear that and say, direction that I want to go. You pick a direction, you pick a process, and then you move towards it. And then at some point you've achieved a level of success with that. And that really needs to be embraced. It really does. And in my life, I remember I wanted to get a job working in a gas station. And then the first day back to school after my first evening working at the gas station, I felt like, man, I have arrived. I'm riding the bus with all these other high school kids, but I work in a gas station. And in those days, you ran the gas station. You pumped the gas into the cars. You took care of all the money and put oil in cars and all that stuff. And that was sort of something that I embraced. But for those of us that are going this route, all right, Tim, 30 deer. All right, Tim's here. Good. He's just, what do you call that? Monitoring us. But I'm really glad that really warmed me up last night, Tim. It really warmed me up. And the other people on that call heard that. And I think that I'm not sure where they're at, honestly. I'm really not sure where those guys are at. I know that they've said we want to do this, and they've moved in that direction. But I had a little bit more personal contact with you, so. But that really warmed me up, because it's a, what's our measure of success in this business? All right, the homesteading business. There is so many facets to it, and one of the facets is mentoring, and that's what this is. What I'm doing is mentoring, and then you asked me for help, and I told you what I know, and I pointed you in the same direction that I'm going, where I think that if you're going to be doing livestock, you need to own the whole process, and processing is part of that process. Otherwise, you're forced to partner with somebody else, and they may not be good business people. So you don't ever want to do that. Wow, what a story. CSA, I first learned about CSA when we first got into farming, and when we went to a conference down at the Katunin Center here in Tustin, and heard about the CSA concept. And closer to bigger cities, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And I know Brice started out with just a few people, and now he's, what did he say, 95 people that he's servicing? That's a lot. That really is a lot. I would say if you wanted to go do a little bit more like value adding on some of the product, you could can a bunch of it. So get real smart about canning stuff, and then grow more and can it, and then have that in the store. Yeah, I kind of let it out of the bag, didn't I? What we're going to do with the outer shop, the old butcher shop, we're going to turn the inner shop into a kitchen, and then the outer part of it will be sort of a store / cafe. So there'll be a couple round tables in there where you can sit, and a coffee bar. And if we're doing a class, hey, it'll be open. Otherwise, it's open all the time anyway. If you want to go in and buy stuff, you can always just swing in, buy a bunch of stuff, and swing back out. But the coffee bar, I don't know if that'll be open. There's events going on here. Of course it will be open. And maybe even, you start thinking along these lines. And if we're doing an event here like Tribe Day, well, what would happen if there was somebody standing there at a grill and they were grilling hamburgers, and hamburgers were $4 a piece or something like that, or whatever, and you got a couple of pickles on there and some French fried potatoes? What would that do? It would employ somebody. It would provide value to the people that come to Tribe Day. Yeah, the burgers are open from this time to this time. And then you could sit in the cafe and you could eat it if you wanted to. Or you could sit out on the terrace, because where we kill chickens now, that all them bloody rocks that are out there, that's going to be a really nice, classy terrace that you can sit out under the tree. And instead of the killing rail being there, it will be just a terrace. So you could sit out there and you could drink your coffee or a glass of wine, I suppose. And then maybe somewhere down the line, we'll do some farm dinners there. So it's just so many things you can do, and they're all just kind of neat. So I'm really psyched. Today I had a very overcast day, cold. Knew I had this interview tonight, and I was thinking about it all day long. I was thinking about our trek down the road of growing vegetables, because I thought at one time that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have it all. I wanted to have produce. I wanted to have chicken. I wanted to have beef and pork, and go to the farmer's market with that. But actually, produce, there's a lot more to it than you think. There is a lot to it. So let's see, what did Tim say here? This process has changed me as a person. I realize that I can do what I put my mind to, but the results are determined by the time I put into it and my willingness not to give up, no matter how tough it gets, because it will be worth it. I hope you don't mind me telling this story, but I got a panicked call the other night from Tim, and he had brought 2 cows to his place, 2 beef, and shot them both. And then the first one took longer than he thought, and then he was like panicked because it was night, and I don't think he was getting any help. I don't think that his helpers there were lining up to help him, and I could hear the slight panic in his voice. And I think he wanted me to tell him, no, you can wait till tomorrow to get that cow skun out. And I had to tell him, nope, get your drop light out, get your knife sharpened up. But I'm sure by the time he fell down that night in bed, he was like, yeah, I'm glad I pressed through and got it done. And now it's calloused him a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit. And, I heard Brice talking about this too. It's like, yeah, I'm working from sun up to sundown, and it's crazy. But I'm also knowing, I think I'm a little older than Brice. I think I'm also knowing that he's not going to scale back next year. He's not. He's going to continue to ratchet it up. I just know. I've seen it too many times. But that's good. It's good. But I bet he gets to a point where he says, well, I'm better at this now. I've got 94 people. I don't want any more. What do I do now? What will I do now? What can I that's just what I've seen many times, and he fits the bill for that type of guy. So he'll keep increasing his repertoire of stuff. I bet. Mark my words. Brice is probably listening to me now, saying, no, I won't. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Once the bug bites. There's a tremendous thing that happens, right? And that Americans miss out on. And that is development of personal achievement, right? Do you remember that movie? It was about Al Capone. It was called The Untouchables. Kevin Costner was in it. And Al Capone, this is a story that was handed down. He had all of his frontline captains at a table. He was feeding them real well, and he started walking around the outside of them, and he says, now's a good time to talk about baseball. And he's got a bat in his hand. And then he says something about teamwork, and everybody goes, yeah, teamwork. And he says, what is this time that we are in? And he says, this is a time to learn personal achievement. And then he takes the bat and he cleans one guy's clock, kills him. And he's just sending a message to the rest of his frontline captain. I don't know why I'm telling you this. But anyway, that personal achievement thing, the personal achievement. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have told that story, because that had nothing to do with what we're doing here. But the whole personal achievement definitely does. When you finish your day, let's say you build something, you need to put the plastic on your greenhouse. And your plastic is sitting there for, what did Brice say? A month. And it's too windy to put the plastic on. Then he wakes up at 5 o'clock one morning. There's no wind. And he says, I'm putting it on myself. And he does. I bet you that night when he was finishing up, or maybe falling off to sleep, or just laying down, or whatever, I bet you he had a moment of euphoria that is done. I know I have that all the time. And I just recently, I framed in that building, right? I framed it in, and I'd go out there and that building is framed in. I like that. That looks good. That's going to look nice. In my mind, I can see the steel on it and everything. And then I'm midway through killing turkeys for Thanksgiving. I got 50 more to go. Life is not good, covered with scratches and blood. And all of a sudden I hear this crash, and there goes the framework over. I was not experiencing euphoria when that happened. But then Matt calls, hey, you need help putting that back up? I sure do. And he came, helped me put it back up, and we closed it in and everything. Now that building's done. Building is done. I've got lights on it. I had the tractor sitting in there, the 2020 that's running good now. It's dry. It's under roof. I parked the other tractor in there tonight. It's not really where I want the other tractor. I use the other one way too much, and it's too far away. So I put the Jeep in there because I don't use the Jeep in the wintertime. So I put that in there with the lights on, and I said, man, we have arrived. That's exactly what I wanted. Mission accomplished, right? And you get this feeling like, I said I was going to build that, and I did. And it doesn't matter if people help you. Like Matt helped me with it, and I'd still, it would be rough. It would be dried in right now, but Matt helping me. I mean, the guy's, he's a whiz when it comes to carpentry. He's really good. And that's nice. Like I said, we connecting the dots. We have a lot of people in the tribe that are very capable in one thing or another. And Brice has shown over and over and over that he is willing to identify pests and things like that. He's pretty active on the tribe. So you heard him. He says, no, he doesn't do consulting, but if you have a problem, just call him. You do consulting, Brice. Yes, you do. And one of these days when the wheels fall off, if that's what happens, you're going to be in high demand for what you know how to do. So I appreciate you coming on and giving us some of your wisdom and just total perseverance. That guy doesn't quit. Okay. Tim says, I remembered that. I will work harder for myself than for someone else. Backward world. Yeah. Actually, I think this is when we see the collapse of the system, then we start to see the rise of the new system. And the new system, there's innovation, there's creativeness, there's hard work. I mean, there's determination. The old system, it's like, hey, that's not my job, man. And oh, you can't do that until you get the okay from the department of this or the department of that. That's the old system where they were in control, and they ran it into the ground. But they've lost control now, and the Fifth Amendment system is way better, way better. Okay, I'm going to get going. Tomorrow's Friday. I have got a work day ahead of me. I'm going to be finishing the floor in this room. This room that I'm in is the back room off the back of the house. Right now, we've got 2 freezers in here and my table, and then this. And this is with the studio, kind of. But the back door is right there, and then there's another door right here that goes to the pool. So it's not a very big room, but we're going to be moving Jill's desk out here. And this will be the office. And then these freezers will be going down into the store. So we just won't have them in here. But before we can do that, we have to have a floor in here. It's concrete and it's really cold. So, yeah, that's where we're going. We actually I want to welcome some of our tribe members. Okay, Tim's saying 5 pig to process for me tomorrow. 5 pig to process for me tomorrow. No, Tim's not an American Indian. 5 pig for me to process tomorrow. He's Italiano. I don't think he is, though. You're not Italian, are you? I think you have an Italian name, but I think we went over that. The team minor. I don't know exactly where that's going to wind up. We got a froggy connection here. But our operation is getting bigger and there's more to do. And so we're having to call on people for help. I do have a project coming up, and I'd like to put it out there. If any of you know somebody that would fit the candidate criteria, we have this apartment next door. It's a garage. There's a little apartment in it. Right now, my son's using it to do automobile maintenance in it, but he's going to be leaving for basic training in January, so he'll be out of there. And that is the area of the farm where we're going to use for the quarter-acre homestead. And what's that say? Heirloom and heritage. Esh, hardworking men. Is that Aaron Esh by any chance? That high school guy? Last time I seen a picture of him, he looked like he was in high school. He lost a bunch of weight, did the carnivore thing. So what I think would be a good combination would be a young married couple, man and woman, young. I'm thinking like, newly married. Well, maybe. I don't know. What's young? They could be in their 50s as far as I'm concerned. But that are willing to work in the butcher shop here, willing to work on the farm, and willing to live there and head up the quarter-acre project. I mean, we're going to build the infrastructure, but we're going to need somebody to tend to it every day, like feed the chickens, feed the pigs, make sure the calves have water, make sure the calves have hay, water the trees, water the butcher. So there's quite a few chores over there, and really lend a personal touch to it, and an artistic touch, because it's going to be an exhibit, really. It's part of the campground. So people will be able to say, oh, on a quarter acre, you mean you can have 2 calves on a quarter acre? Yeah, you sure can. You got to have something to generate manure, right? Besides you. So the right couple, it could be a great opportunity for them, and we'd get them into a 1-year thing or a 2-year thing, and they would get paid, commensurate with the jobs that are going on around here. It wouldn't be like a serious money maker. It would be a learning experience. So if a young couple that doesn't know anything about homesteading but would like a boost in that direction, it'd be a place to land for a year, maybe get your mental health together, learn all these processes from us, earn some, but it really isn't about what you earn. It's more about what you learn. And only plan on it for a season or 2, and then we can get another couple in to man it and churn them out as clean, dry, serviceable homesteader types that can go off on their own and really make it happen. It's kind of like Brice was talking about with, I can't think of her name now, even though I hear her name all the time, it seems like. So that's what I'm thinking, and I don't know if it's going to come to fruition sooner or later. I just don't know. It really has to do with what happens, what comes my way. If somebody calls me tomorrow and says, I got the perfect people, and I say, send them over, and they say, fine, and they come and I say, well, there's the apartment, and we love it, then it can start happening. It's sort of like when we moved here, we could see beyond the barn that was falling down and the house that was in shambles. We could see beyond that, and we worked beyond that, and now we're way beyond that. It's all happening now. So it would take the right type of people, but you have to be the right type of person to be in this. You don't step into this, you work your way into it. And that's what we heard with Brice. He is being perfectly honest with you guys about that piece of land over there. It was Christmas trees. And when they cut the Christmas trees out, they just cut the Christmas trees and they walk away from it. So he was able to secure more of it. And last time I was over there, it was pretty smoothed out, and he had planted rye, and it was doing pretty well. So he's a talented guy, and we are very lucky to have him in the tribe. So there you go. Got a lot of good people. Hey, I'm going to get going. I'm looking forward to my Friday. I also have to eat dinner, so I may go have me a steak. Remember, anyone can farm. Just a hobby steak, though. It's not a real steak. It's a hobby steak. Anyone can farm.